This week's show will tackle the recent legislation banning certain books from being sold at retail locations and what that implication might mean for indies and how we can prevent it before the shelves empty. We'll ask those questions and more with our expert roundtable panel. Then C.L. Cannon will be along sharing multiple indie books written and published from a POC perspective that will definitely empower and enthrall you, while Deborah Parmly continues the indie love literally in the final 5 minutes. So sit down, grab your coffee, and let's get to talking about all these issues and more. Here's your host for This Week in Indies, Joe Compton. Hello, everybody, and welcome to This Week in Indies for February 6th, 2022. We've got a great show. We're going to be talking a little bit of controversial subject matter. I think, I don't know how controversial it is, depending, I guess, where you stand on it. But we're going to be exploring banned books this week with the roundtable discussion. And before we get started, I want to say something really quickly about what we're about to talk about, okay? This in no means whatsoever is about anybody's religious affiliation, political affiliation. We're not here to attack anybody's beliefs or thoughts even on parenting to a certain extent. What we're trying to do here is just give you an idea of what our perspectives are from where we sit in this subject matter. That being said, I am not going to censor anybody in this conversation. So if it goes a certain direction or has a certain thing that offends you or it's talking about something that makes you uncomfortable, I apologize ahead of time. But my goal is to allow people to speak. So whatever they have to say is what's going to be said here. And that's just the way it's going to be. And so that being said, this is our roundtable. I have a wonderful group of people with me today, as you can see, a fantastic group. And we're going to get started here pretty quickly, but let's get around the room and say hello to everybody. So Nikki, why don't you start us off?
Hi, I'm Nikki Nelson Hicks, and I write a lot of books that people probably wouldn't like to read, but that's fine with me. And also, you kind of tied my hands, Joe. Come on. Okay, not talk about things that upset people. That's no fun at all. But yeah, I'm here. I write a lot of stuff, speculative fiction, horror, anything that has a good murder and a monster in it. That's what I like to read. That's what I like to write.
Well, you can talk about them all you want. I'm just letting people. Yeah, I'm just letting people know that this is what's ahead. So, all right, Alex, you want to tell everybody about yourself, sir?
Sure. I'm Alex G. ZARATE. I'm an author, artist, and photographer. I write, sci-fi, fantasy. I write nonfiction as well. I'm a photographer, and I dabble in art.
Awesome. Welcome, sir. All right, Anita, you want to tell everybody about yourself?
Hi, I'm Anita. I write under A.F. Stewart, horror, fantasy, poetry, dabbling now in steampunk, paranormal detective fiction. And I also host 2 podcasts, one for this Go Indie Now, Words to Kill, also Between the Pages Book Chat. I'm expanding my AuthorTube profile, and I'm now on Ko-fi. Yay!
Nice, awesome. Which we talked about last week. So, all right.
But I have my sci-fi serial up there now.
Oh, nice, cool, awesome. Maddie.
Hey guys, I'm Madeline Dale. I am a mostly fantasy author with many subgenres of it. Some of the stuff I write definitely would be on the banned book list for schools. Yeah, you can find all my stuff at my website here. So.
Yes, I've read one of them.
Definitely not school appropriate.
It's unfortunate because it's really good. And I think, we'll get into it anyway. All right, Deborah, you want to tell everybody a little bit about yourself, please?
Hi, I'm Deborah Parmley, and I'm a mobile author. I live in a motorhome full-time with my husband, and we travel the U.S. while I write. And I write military romantic suspense and other genres of romance as Debra Parmley. And then as Deborah Bishop, I write my non-romance, so fantasy, some children's, fairy tales, stuff like that.
All right, welcome. And yeah, so the great state of Tennessee has passed some legislature, and we have a permanent resident there, and somebody who knows Tennessee well as well on this panel. But I wanted to start with you, Nikki, kind of give your thoughts on this whole idea of it and where you're at in terms of that, and just kind of get the conversation going, because this is affecting you directly right now. So
Yeah. Well, the whole thing about them banning mouse, of course, everyone kind of got up in arms about it, and I understand why. I started a conversation, and it was fascinating how many people jumped up to say, well, we think that this is too harmful for young people to read, especially like first and second graders. And other people would jump up and say, well, then if it's too harmful for them to read about this, then, well, obviously these children shouldn't be having, I don't know, active school shooting things. I mean, they can handle that. They can handle this. It was fascinating to watch it. Why it was, I'm not surprised, especially considering the county that it was. This isn't Tennessee wide. This is just one county that banned it. I'm not surprised. It's an extremely Republican, very conservative county. Yeah. And supposedly they banned it because not so much of the theme of it, because of one panel where you see a naked mouse with boobs. That's why they got rid of the entire book, even though the subject of the book is something we should be teaching. I mean, that's just everyone. I mean, come on. Everyone, it's a subject that we need to constantly be reminded of the evils that we humans can do. And just, I lived in Budapest, Hungary for 18 months. And it was fascinating to be in a place that was there. I mean, they had Nazis. There was one point, there was actually one small town over from us where the mayor of that town supposedly didn't know about the concentration camps. And the ashes from that place would actually settle on everyone's houses. And they were constantly having to clean up the ashes, not realizing that this wasn't dust. This was ashes. And yeah, he committed suicide soon after they found out what was actually happening in their own backyard. And it's just fascinating to me. You've got people who want to just bulldoze over that and not discuss it because they're afraid it's going to upset children. I could tell you this. I mean, kids they're hardy, and they need to know this. We need to teach them soon and fast what the evils that humans have done, are doing, and can still conceivably do. It's not in the past. I mean, fascinating to me is that Nazis are illegal in Germany, not here. There's more Nazis in America than you'll ever find in Germany. We in Budapest, we actually had on Christmas Eve, some neo-Nazis started a little thing, did a little five Nazis, a little circle protest around the American embassy, and all the Marines had to go. Five Nazis in all of Budapest. But here, no, because doesn't that bother you? It's like it's a freedom of thought, but should there be some freedoms of thought that should be banned? Should there be?
That's kind of the idea, right? I mean, that's the thought about all this.
Doesn't that bother? I mean, it gets into the whole prime directive crap, which I always hated. The idea that perhaps there are things that, it's not really your business, but at the same time, if that business gets in my business, then it becomes my business. Is that what we need to, say, no, I'm sorry. You can't want to kill a person because they happen to have red hair. We can't destroy an entire genetic line because they happen to be from this particular part of the world. You can't do that. It's just wrong. Can things just be wrong?
What does everybody think?
Yes,
that's a lot.
Can't just be wrong.
It's just wrong.
Not be. Period.
Yes. Things are just wrong.
Genocide is bad. Yes.
I think the problem is.
Go ahead. Sorry, Deborah.
I think the problem is, and I think we'll need to, especially when it involves banned books is that we need to distinguish between the banning action and the challenge of a book. So in the US, of course, we're in a democracy, and those who challenge books do have that right because we live in a democracy. I don't think we want to lose that. In a democracy, everyone gets to participate. No voices are shut up. So even if we don't agree with what's being said, they have the right to say it. So that's distinguished over here. And then over here, the actual banning, which removes the book from the shelf. I don't think we want to throw out the challenge of books because that would be to destroy our democracy. But the actual banning, sometimes the book is challenged and it's not banned, and sometimes it is. But I don't think we want to lose our democratic process and our rights with this issue, or any issue really. And of course, that's going to give people who would have extreme opinions and ideas a voice. But in a democracy, everyone has a voice. And oh my gosh, we've got so many military people in our past that have died for that right. And we need to hold on to that because that's important. But banning a book is a separate thing entirely. And I think that's where the problems arise.
Yeah.
And
and
some
one of-
of the sorry, Anita.
I was going to say, one of the things we've kind of lost in the way is the debate. I mean, people can have extreme opinions, people can have focused opinions, but they're not allowing other people to voice the opposite opinion. It's my way or you're wrong.
Yeah.
And that's where the problem starts. It's that you're not listening anymore. When you stop listening, then you get the problems.
You get the echo chamber effect. You're only listening to what other people say that you want to agree with.
Exactly.
And that becomes a big problem because it becomes a huge loop and you
Yeah.
can't get out of the loop. And there's no critical thinking. We're not big on critical thinking here in America. We don't like it.
No, and it's not okay because it's important. Like
It's
to have that ability to think critically. And some of the books they're banning it for reasons that are not like some of them it's historical kind of stuff. A lot of history and stuff is left out because of the book talks about how people were treated at a certain period of time in America's history, like the Native Americans, Black lives. Like they're banning books that talk about that, but when there's truth behind what has happened, and we need to know that stuff.
The truth will out. I always believe that the truth is the daughter of time. It always eventually comes back. You can't get rid of the truth. You can hide it. You can push it down, but eventually it will come up. And that's just me being a Pollyanna. I like to believe that. Because also think about this as artists. Is it not also kind of just castrating to be told what you can and cannot do? What you can and cannot think about, what you can and cannot write about, draw, whatever. It's frustrating and very, very angering sometimes because I can't do this. Why can't I do this? Well, because you might offend blankety blank. Well, screw blankety blank. Blankety blank doesn't have to read my book.
Yeah.
So,
and me personally, I had to break through that train of thought, like that thought process to actually get to like my latest book. I had to break through those thought processes because that's how I was raised. Like, no, it's offensive to do these things or to mention these words or like, yeah.
I have many friends who write under a different name because they're worried that their parents or their family will find out what they write. I'm lucky. I'm an orphan. I have no one. So I can offend anybody I want to offend. So.
Yeah. Well, my family doesn't read my books, so I don't have to worry about that.
Yeah, no, mine are all.
What do you think, Alex? What are your thoughts on this, on banning books?
It all comes down to the whole thought police thing, 1984, where you try to tell people what they're allowed to think, what they're allowed not to think. And, you kind of see that happening more and more today because you have all these, groups and, angry people out there shouting. And that's where the whole, cancel culture thing, all you need is enough people who get upset about, comment or a show or something, and all of a sudden, there's riots going on and telling people just get rid of this, don't get rid of that movie, get rid of that video, get rid of that book. It doesn't make any sense. If you don't have 2 points of view, then how do you know if your view is right? You're never going to see the opposite side to realize that, oh yeah, they're definitely wrong. Just listen to their reasoning and then listen to what we have to say. But if you say, okay, everything I say is true and everything they say is wrong, don't listen to anything they say, well, how is anyone ever going to know what you're saying makes any sense? So as soon as you start banning books and removing, literature, especially historical literature, we're back to the whole, if you don't remember history, you're doomed to repeat it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, some of these books are problematic, like especially with the history, the things that have been written in past ages. I mean, some of them are problematic, but if you're going to read them, and I don't think they should be banned, but I do think you should go into them knowing that they are going to be a little problematic, and they're probably not, a lot of their views are not good. But I mean, it's interesting to see what they thought in past ages, at least in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I find that fascinating. And to see
Yeah,
how we've grown.
We've got some comments already here. It's a polarizing topic, to be sure. And Deandre says that's how you tear down a country. You start to demoralize it by making the wrong right. You can then make them do whatever, or should have a voice. I think that was a comment for somebody that was saying something. You demoralize, you ban actual history, you mold them into whatever you want. And Sharmeen also says certain people want to return to the moral majority days. I remember the late 50s, early 60s, horrible times. I'm curious what your thoughts are on the idea that this is fiction. Most of these things that are being banned are fiction. And is there a different distinction that we should be making with fiction, as opposed to, I mean, nonfiction, has, research behind it, has things behind it, but people don't realize how much research goes into authenticating fiction too. And a lot of people really, really hold on to the idea that, I worked really hard to make this as real as possible for society. And so, for somebody to read it and kind of not feel dismissed by it, or not feel like it's not, real in that respect, but it is still fiction. Is there a distinction that we should be making in that respect?
I find that fiction tells the best truth. Rod Serling used to say the best thing about Twilight Zone was they could say a lot of political comments about racism, about the war, about anti-Semitism. They could say these things, but put them under the guise of a Martian or an alien or a ghost or a monster. And same thing for fiction. It's the best way to tell the truth. Aesop knew this. Jesus knew this. It is the best way and the easiest way to disseminate the truth is by putting it in fiction. Some of my favorite books, the Discworld books by Terry Pratchett, are, yes, fantasy novels, but they're satire. It's all satire. And when you read it with that knowing in mind that he's actually making fun of or exposing some sort of evil or some sort of stupidity in the world, but putting it in the way of a fiction. I think people who want power understand the power of fiction to get inside people's heads. They understand how it molds us, because humans, we are a storytelling species. We live by the metaphor. We do. Everything about it is this metaphor. And I think people who really want power understand that, and they know they have to snip that in the bud. Because, I mean, we were talking about this earlier, the guy in Mount Juliet, Pastor Greg, who had the book burning. He didn't burn Mouse. He didn't burn Darwin's book. No, he burnt Twilight and Harry Potter because he believes these two books allow demons into your life. These books? No, they don't. But it's fascinating to me is that this person lives in such a world, a demon, as Carl Sagan would have put it, the demon-haunted world of superstition and fear, that he's so scared of demons that he's going to burn crap novels. Twilight, for Christ's sakes.
And The Demon Haunted World is a very good book, by the way. You should read it.
If you get a chance, read The Demon Haunted World by Carl Sagan.
Oh, yeah. Excellent book. Anyway, but I
If we
agree.
look
Like
at-
fiction hits harder than nonfiction because people identify with the characters. They see themselves and pieces of their lives in the characters. So fiction influences as opposed to what nonfiction. Nonfiction informs, fiction influences. And
Influences. Ooh, that's lovely. That's
why
a
they
great
target
tagline.
fiction.
Influences.
Good tagline.
Yes. Good,
Yes.
Good.
If we look at children's fiction for a moment, if you recall fairy tales, when fairy tales were somewhat watered down and taken away, and the original Grimm was very grim, and
Very.
Mhm,
so
very.
that was decided that was too much for children. Okay, so we take all that away, and then suddenly there has to be books about don't talk to strangers. Well, prior to that, you didn't have to have a book that said don't talk to strangers because the big bad wolf would tell you that in a
Exactly.
fun way that children love to hear. So as far as teaching with children's books, I think it's so much better to teach with a fictional story than, the boring don't talk to strangers book. You know what I'm saying?
I do see, yeah.
Yeah, because kids, they see those characters, those fun animal characters. My son, for example, he loves those books. But you bring out a book that's trying to teach a message like friendship with different cultures and stuff, and it's the people versus like the animals, different animals. He'll go for the animals over that. And it's, yeah.
Because it's metaphor. Children are still seeing the world in metaphor.
Yeah, thanks to a bear, I know not to make forest fires. But,
Exactly.
Exactly. Yes. Smokey the Bear.
Interesting enough, though, the original Grimm's fairy tales was actually censored into a lighter version for children.
Yeah.
Wow. I just thought Disney got a hold of it and snipped it all to hell. Because he did. Disney just,
Disney just sanitized the heck out
Oh
of
my
those
God.
characters.
The Little Mermaid? Oh, have you read The Little Mermaid? Oh my
I
God.
have,
No.
yeah.
Oh, yes. I mean, no. There was no happy ending for that little girl. No.
But even the true story of Mulan, like that, none of that happened.
I know.
Like,
None of that happened.
actual, no.
Great movie. Loved it. Great
Yes.
songs.
Yes.
But no. Same way with don't even get me started on Pocahontas.
I
Pocahontas.
know. Yeah.
So, yeah.
As you guys are awesome. As indies, we part of the reason why we like to be indies is because we can tell the stories we want to tell and tell them the way we want to tell them and be as grim and be as open as possible. And so I'm wondering, from your perspectives, do you feel any responsibility to your readership for what you're producing? And does that give you pause when you're writing? Or do you feel like it's up to the individual person to kind of make that distinction? And is that where is that where the disconnect is for banning books?
I think that may be. I was once asked that question in a panel, and my answer then was, maybe it's still the same, is that I write to entertain. I write to divert. I give you something to do while you're sitting on a bench or waiting in a doctor's office or on the toilet. I give you something to do. I'm just a diversion because my stuff is just fun. I just write pulpy, fun stuff. I can't imagine, Stone Baby has some pretty nasty stuff in it, but I can't imagine that this would cause any kind of problems. But at the same time, it's, how do you disassociate the art from the artist? We get into that. Like H.P. Lovecraft. I mean, he influenced 20th century horror to ways people don't even realize it. He was a terrible human being.
Yeah.
Let's see. Do I feel responsible towards my readership? Oh my gosh. I don't know. I think, quite frankly, it's kind of up to you when you read my stories again, but I don't think I write anything that's that deep. But if you were to read something, if you had questions about it, come talk to me. At the same time, I write to entertain and to divert. I had a friend who was writing because he wanted to change. He wanted to explain the pagan religions to the mainstream. That was his whole focus. All of his focus for his books was he wanted to create a bridge between the pagan religions and the mainstream. So he had this focus. I do not have that focus. I'm here to entertain and divert. Makes me feel sad, but oh well.
Yeah, I agree because my stories are kind of like a steamy way for people to escape into, so give them something fun to read and imagine.
Yeah.
In some cases, I write the world as I wish it was. And once in a while, I'll write a story that I hope my readers can learn something from. For instance, I had a story out that had a live shooter. And in that story, there is a Navy SEAL seated next to the heroine. They've never met, but he stops the live shooter. It's in chapter 1, so it's not giving a lot away to tell you this. Because the story then takes off because he's got 2 men that need tourniquets put on, and he can't do both at the same time. So he talks her through putting on a tourniquet on the other guy. And I was hoping as I wrote that scene that my readers could learn something from that and that could be of help someday. But for the most part, when I'm writing, I'm not writing really to teach. I'm writing to entertain. It's just every once in a while something like that will come up and I'll think, hey, it would be good if people knew this thing or that thing. And so I'm going to put that in there in the story so they can enjoy the story, but also maybe pick up some information along the way.
Yeah, I mean, I write stories, but some of the subjects I deal with are dark, so I have to be careful sometimes about how I present it. But I'm not going to shy away from the subject matter if I want to write about it. So,
Alex, you want to chime in?
Sure. Yeah. For my stories, I typically try to set a scene and find the best way to tell it. Although I do try a little bit to make sure that it is accessible to the readers. If it is a dark subject matter, like whether it's like you're saying a shooting or some kind of abuse or something, I understand that as it happens and as the story progresses, it's not going to be a pleasant thing. I try to circle back to make sure everything turns out well, but in the meanwhile, it's just like anything else. The trauma is taking place. You have to be in the moment. If you can't bring the reader in to actually experience it, then you're not being true to your own voice to try to make sure you bring these people into the characters that you're creating. And that's usually the best thing that you want to do is get these characters and make them as real as possible. That way you love the hero or the heroine and you really hate the villain because they're doing things that you definitely want to see punished in the end.
So that brings into the segmenting of the idea that bridges the gap between this extreme and the extreme of banned books, which is trigger warnings. And we've had this conversation before. So is that the proper step, you think, to get people aware of what is being taught in these books? Because a lot of people have a hard time making the distinction between whether they're being entertained or being taught. That seems to be what the banned books is trying to tell people. And is that a case? I mean, should we be more conscious as indies? Do you think that would save us from being banned, is putting trigger warnings? I mean, is that a step that we should be taking? I mean, is that something that could bridge the gap?
I actually saw an interesting video on this from the point of view of a reader. Yeah, a few weeks ago. She's had some past traumas, and she was talking about trigger warnings. She's also an author, but it's like, and she was saying it's like the trigger warnings aren't censorship; they're just information to let the person know who wants to read the book whether or not something in it is going to freak them out or trigger some trauma of theirs, and then let them decide whether they can handle it or not, which I thought was interesting point of view, and it makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, that's a good point. And a lot of times I feel like the genre itself will kind of point or hint at stuff that might be in it. I will say I do use trigger warnings. I put them on the copyright page, but I also write like some of my erotica that I write under a different pen name. There is a whole different like way that the Zon sells them. Like you literally have to have the actual link to get to those books. Like you can't just like put it into a search. It's difficult to do that. So
I also think the genre should be a kind of a warning in itself. If you're going to be reading horror, you're going to be reading some horrific things. However, if there's something like sexual abuse in it, something like that, animal abuse, and it's something that's really going to upset you, yeah, I don't see why not. I mean, I know a couple of people who use trigger warnings. It's just a marketing technique. So they think that, oh, I'll be an edgelord if I read this. So it can be used for both.
I don't use trigger warnings on mine, but I do write certain subject matter that could be triggering. But I think that the blurbs that go with the stories are pretty much self-explanatory with that. I have a series within a former Kindle World series that I write in, another author's world, that is a ranch that women who've been attacked and abused go to learn self-defense and other things. So any reader picking up that book is going to know that the heroine has had something pretty bad happen in the past. What I don't have in those books is those scenes of that happening for a couple reasons. One, I don't want anybody who's twisted to get off on a scene that I've written when they shouldn't, and when this shouldn't be happening in the world at all. And two, I don't want to trigger my readers. I want to show them moving from that to a place of empowerment beyond surviving to thriving. So my hope is that it doesn't hurt but helps. Now, having said that, I know of a few instances where readers have told me they couldn't finish a book because it triggered them too much. And that's just how it is. But I've always written not necessarily the stereotypical damsel in distress, but bad things happen, women become empowered, and they have a happy ever after because it's, of course, romance. So I can't fix it for everyone, but I do the best that I can. I think trigger warnings, though, don't really give a flavor for what the book's going to do. And I'm not quite sure I understand the point of them. I think if you have a well-written blurb, they're going to pick that up from the blurb as far as what the book is actually about.
Yeah, that's what I usually do. I try to add the blurb or the synopsis to give enough of a description so people understand what's going to happen in the book. That way, it's not a surprise when the villain or the bad guy who's getting into the situation goes out there and is committing crimes and attacking people and shooting or whatnot. You see it in the blurb. You understand the hero is facing off against somebody this bad. In one of the first books I put out was supernatural cat crosses paths with a little boy, and it turns out some professional killer is in town and suddenly wants this cat. And you have to understand, this killer he earns his reputation. He is actually there to do something terrible. And then when he starts going after the child, it's like you cannot sugarcoat that. Okay, this trained killer or murderer is out there and looking for someone in particular, and he's just going to have kids gloves on. It's like, no, you have to understand that he's going to do these things. You have to understand what he's going to be after. So just pointing that situation out, people will realize it's going to be like that. But if you put, trigger warning, there will be shooting, trigger warning, there will be, physical abuse, and trigger warning, there will be assault. And, if you put all that stuff in there, then you're spending all your time trying to put, these warnings when the situation itself should, forewarn anybody who's not wanting to read any of that.
So then, okay, and this is awesome. I love all this. I'm trying to wrap my head around the idea of, it's just what is it that, I mean, it's really right now. It's not affecting us as authors. It's affecting us as readers. This idea of banning books. But it could eventually lead to us, being banned and what have you. So in that respect, what are we doing? What can we do to kind of change the trajectory to stop it before it starts? Is there something we can do? Is it just make people aware of the books, where you can get them and how to get them? I mean, what is it you think we can do to help, make sure that that there is no censorship with this ideas?
Well, like you said, make people aware of what's happening, but also, I mean, as writers, not really a whole lot we can do. If you really want to work on this, you've got to get involved in politics on the local level. Get involved with your school system, your school board, your libraries. I have a friend who's a mayor in his little town. He's always saying that if you really want to help make your town, make your place better, you've got to get involved with the powers that be and make things roll. So if you really want to stop this, you're going to have to get involved with politics, as unseemly as that is.
Nikki is right, though. Like, that's, yeah.
Only way you can do it.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm sorry, I ruined it. Sorry. Were you expecting more? I'm sorry. Conversation.
You said it perfectly, though. So
You're going to have to get involved in politics and push some wheels. That's all you got to do.
Deandre says she likes the idea that there are several ways to tackle traumatic subjects in their books. Each author can make their own choice what works best for them. Yeah.
Oh, and vote. Always vote. Never not vote. That always bothers me.
Getting involved is the only way, unfortunately. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, so yeah, it just sucks. I mean,
we can't sit here and just say things. We have to do the things. I know it sucks. Trust me. I'd rather prefer just blah, blah, blah. No, you got to get out there and do the things. It sucks. It means leaving my house and putting on pants.
How dare they do that to you?
How dare I have to put on pants and go outside and do the things? But it's true. It's what you got to do. You got to get out there, get involved in politics, vote, and just, be out there, be a voice. If you want to be heard, you got to be a voice.
And maybe educate the librarians and stuff on the books and how it would help their people read it, I mean, and I say this coming from a small town. My English teacher she's now running the school library at home. And yeah, so I mean, we could just talking to her about books. It's easier to be like, hey, this is why the students need to read this book versus here, just take my book and put it on your shelf. And they won't do it. But I mean, they need to be aware of what's in the book and how it can help the students. So.
Yeah, be part of your community.
Mm-hmm.
As long as you're trying to be active in your community, your neighbors, talk to, like you said, go to the library, even with social media apps like Nextdoor, just talk to people, be a part of their community, be part of each other, and then when a new book is coming out or someone is debating a book, you can actually have a conversation instead of not finding out until all of a sudden someone is saying, oh yeah, we have now banned this whole section of the library because these 3 or 4 people have said they don't like it, but nobody else was included.
Right.
It's usually when only the few people are in control that decisions are made that cause an uproar. We need more understanding as to what's happening.
Yeah.
There's another thing that goes on is that not necessarily just the banning of books, because of course, banning the books, of course, we know that means removing the books from the accessibility to the reader. But that there is selective censoring where they don't buy the book in the first place. And I think what you see with libraries, I used to work, my work-study job in college was at the college library. So libraries have always been of interest to me. And I almost went into library science as a degree. So I kind of pay attention to library life. And so what happens is there is only so much budget. And they'll allocate these dollars for this and that. And then if something is incredibly controversial, they may just not buy that book. So it makes the book inaccessible in a different way. It's not that it was banned because it was on the shelf and they took it away. They never bought it to begin with. And to a certain extent, that's got to be allowed because, it's their funds to do with as they please. I don't think authors think about that so much, but it does affect authors who are writing, particularly if you are wanting to write for the library market. And recently I've been looking at that pretty heavily because I just came out with my first large print hardcover this week. So for this large print hardcover, that is a certain demographic. And those are older, usually women, older readers. They don't want all the sex in the romance books for the most part when they're in that demographic. So for those books, I'm toning it down. They're a sweeter version because the retired people I keep talking to are saying they're skim reading past that part anyway. They don't care about that. They want to get to the story. And because I write action and adventure in my romances, it's not just a love story. I have enough story that I can easily either close the door or pull it out completely. And it doesn't affect the story at all. So I'm gearing toward that market. And I'm not expecting a library to buy a book with sex in it for an aging demographic that wants large print and a sweeter love story. So I think you need to think about your audience a little bit when this subject comes up. And if you want the library market, you need to make your book something that they would say, oh, hey, my readers would like that. So that's not so much censoring as it is, because I'm self-censoring that book to put it out there that way. But I'm meeting what my readers want to read, which is a different thing entirely than saying, no, you can't read something. Instead, I'm saying, here, this is what you like to read. Here's a version that you might like. So.
Awesome. Well, I know a version of a show you all might like, and that is the Indie Connection. And I hope you do like this one. This is a very important one. It's a really great Indie Connection that CL Canada has done. And when that's all done, I got another question for the panel, and we'll wrap it up. But here is your Indie Connection for this week. I really hope, I always say to go buy these books, to take a look at them. But this week is really, I think, is something that I really hope you all really take a look at this, and hopefully one of them speaks to you and you go and check it out, because that's a really good one. So anyway, here it is, and we'll be right back.
Hey guys, C.O. Cannon here from Fiction Atlas Press, bring you another Indie Connection. Today I'm going to be telling you about some indie books that you might enjoy if you're a fan of The Unbroken by C.L. Clarke. The first book I have for you is called Apprentice, The Last Witch of Rome by Rhett Gervais. Betrayed by an empire she was sworn to defend, enslaved by an emperor she was meant to protect. On the day that Julius Gaius Caesar crossed the Rubicon to end the Roman Republic, the witch women of the Osei tribe had a vision of the future, and what they saw terrified them. To protect the world, they allied with the new dictator of Rome. In return for destroying his enemies and securing his empire, he would allow a single djembe to serve at his side, to use her magic to guard against the encroaching chaos they knew would one day come. Vesper's destiny was to serve at the emperor's side, but when the mad Emperor Commodus comes to power, he doesn't believe in magic and old fairy tales. In a fit of rage, he destroys her people and orders her execution, just as a dark tide takes hold of Rome. Now, with the world in peril, Vesper must do the impossible, survive her execution, and save an empire that has betrayed her. The second book I have for you is called The Language of Spears by Deandre August. Can a kingdom whose supremacy thrives on a tradition of war really learn peace? In the esteemed Moon Empire, the Ascari are an elite rank of widely revered generals sworn to protect the kingdom. For Amani Malachi, renown and admiration are only half the burden borne for being the most respected of these soldiers in an empire built on the ruins of its enemies, and that burden is about to get even heavier. As the kingdom's capital, Komazi becomes the epicenter of King Afar's new way. The people are forced to diverge from their martial traditions and adopt a peaceful lifestyle. But the Moon Empire was built on blood and ashes. A treasured member of the king's closest circle, Amani is angered by the decision as it threatens to leave the empire vulnerable to enemy assault. Worse yet, the nearby kingdom of New Esther has seen the rapid ascent of a false king whose dangerous ambition looms on Komazi's horizon. And after a mysterious mercenary known as the Cat appears in town, the reality of the false king's monstrous force is laid bare for Amani to see. The choice is simple: accept King Afar's new way, or disobey the king and protect his home. The third book I have for you is called The Shadowbearer by Terry C. Simpson. Knight Commander Stephen Dorn, leader of the Unvanquished, has known only war, death, and victory, all in the name of his loyalty to King Nareen the Lightbearer, a man he idolized. Until now. Everything he thought he knew about the king, his people, and his world is coming to an end. At a time when there should be peace, he's once again called to war. Torn between shocking changes at home, his family, loyalty to his men, and his king, Stephen wishes only to enjoy life away from the battlefield. But with a new campaign comes a rabid, unforgiving enemy and a potential cataclysm. Follow him as he fights to save his family, his people, and his birthright from the grips of the Shade. When failure is not an option, which will he sacrifice for a chance at victory? And the last book I have for you is called A Ruin of Shadows by L.D. Lewis. General Daneja Ido is a legend, head of the celebrated Bahorian Empire's military and possessor of a mask of untold power. She has raised her shadow army of 7 assassins from childhood, but mounting disillusionment over a life of brutality, a petulant emperor, and a prodding from the artful Jin force her to defy orders for the first time in her 30-year career. When the Empire decides they no longer need Ido, if they can get the mask, she must face the monsters of her own making and the legacy they've turned against her. Okay, that's all for me this week. I'll see you next week on The Indie Connection. Bye!
So there's the Indie Connection for this week, and like I said, please go check them out. All the links are there in our description boxes of wherever you're watching this at, and you can go check those out. And one way to, as Shermie says here, bought banned books from Better Worlds, which helps 2 ways. So we love when you help out, and we also have all of the links to books for all of my friends here as well. So everybody go check those out as well, please. We would love that. It's, as much as they like talking to me and being here and in my presence and having nice conversations, they're really here because they want you to buy their stuff. So buy their stuff, everybody. Please. That's what it's all about. So I wanted to kind of finish today's topic with something that I was a part of, and I'm sure a few of you remember this time period. But in the early 80s, when music was starting to rule the roost and people were getting into music, especially heavy metal music, this was and rap as well was affected by this. There was a movement to censor these albums, to censor the music. And one way they did that was by putting trigger warnings on the front of the covers and then distinguishing them by a rating system, or just outright making the record company put out an alternate version that censored the words or censored the things that were bad about it. And which is if that's your choice, that's great. I'm not saying that's a bad thing at all. But what I'm getting at is that what that triggered, what that created, was the extreme and the less extreme. It watered everything down. Music, people were discouraged from making music for a very long time because they did not want it to be perceived as hurting somebody. They didn't want to deal with this as well. That was also part of it. And then, or they went the other very opposite direction where they just hit you as hard as they fucking can, and just beat you until you gave up, or until you told them to, till you got banned completely. And so, this is the beginning of something in the book world that has been around for a long time. And banning books and burning books has been around
forever.
Quite a bit. Yeah, and
but the Library of Alexandria, come on, it's been around forever.
So, but we've never had that shift in thought process. In fact, books have kind of universally just kind of been able to do what it wants to do when it wants to do it, no matter what anybody else says about it or thinks about it. But with cancel culture and the shift that we're in now in our society, is there concerns on your end about which direction to go? I mean, Deborah, you mentioned you write a different version for an older crowd because that's a demographic that you want to hit, and you do that. And I've done the same thing. I published my first book. I published in Germany, and when I did that, when it got translated into German, there were certain things and certain phrases that were in English that meant something different in German. And I had to rewrite those, or they had to be rewritten so that it wouldn't offend the German population or misstrew the German population more accurately. It wasn't so much about offending them as it was, this word means something differently. So the context of what I was saying meant something different. And so they changed it so that they would filter the proper context. But so, I mean, in that respect, is there a thought process behind, manning yourself for war? Are you preparing yourself for, I'm going to go to the extreme, or I'm going to go ahead and settle in? Or is there no concern whatsoever about this? Is this just something that happens and we just got to deal with it and move forward? So that's where I want to kind of finish things. So I'd be happy to let you all talk and have me stop talking, for God's sake.
Well, I write horror. I write horror, so extreme is kind of part of the genre. So I don't worry about it too much because I can pretty much push the envelope any way I want, and horror fans will eat it up as long as it's well written. I mean, the only criteria they have is it's got to make sense and it's got to be well written. Otherwise, you can kill people, eat people, shred them to bits, chop them up. Doesn't matter. They like it. So, but I mean, I've seen the opposite reaction though to the book banning, like with Mouse on the online. I've seen a lot of people react to, I'm going to go out and buy this book now because it's been banned. So you get a lot of that when you ban books. You actually increase sales on banned books because people are going, why are they banning this book? I want to go read it.
I remember old Tipper Gore. Basically, that was it was a marketing ploy. But as for me, like my Jake Ishinheji stories, I have a lot of, especially in the very first couple of stories. Anyway, when I deal with the Romani people, I call them first gypsies, which is extremely, it's kind of a slur word for them. So I try not to use that anymore because I don't want to do that. But when he does say the word gypsy, when he calls his brother Radu a gypsy, he means it in the most vulgar term because he understands that it's a slur word. So yeah, I have been. I kind of tempered myself with the Jake stuff with the Romani people. But other than that, not really. Again, because I write fantasy and I write horror and I write weird shit. So I can pretty much do whatever I want. And also, I don't have like the readership. I have to really worry that much about it. If people ban my books, awesome. They go out and buy my books. But a lot of that stuff is I think, is marketing. A lot of marketing. I'm just cynical. But I remember back in the 80s when they used to slap that shit on all the records. They just made you want to buy it more just to piss off your parents, It was silly. It's stupid. The stuff I hear on the radio now, I mean, come on. Do you guys remember when Married with Children was considered risque? Married with Children. Oh, my God. They had no idea what was on the horizon. The Simpsons was worse. And now Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Are you insane? They always push
Yeah.
the envelope.
Yeah, I mean, Motley Crue. I mean, come on.
Oh my gosh! Oh, my very favorite.
That should have been bad for a whole other reason.
Well, that did that. You listen to Black Sabbath or Ozzy Osbourne, you're worshiping the devil. And the thing is, this was all just theater for them. If they were truly sacrificing human beings, why aren't they dead yet? It's just, South Park is a brilliant piece of satire, but man, can it get nasty. But they did a great job basically dismantling Scientology with a cartoon. So, yeah, it's great. I love South Park. It's a great piece of satire wrapped up in dick jokes. Yeah.
All I can think of is the song "The WAP." That if you guys, I mean, that younger generation has been obsessed with. I'm like, whoa, okay, yeah. We couldn't listen to that when I was your age.
Okay. When I have a story. When I was in 6th grade, my teacher allowed us to bring 45s because I'm old to an afternoon thing. Anyway, someone brought the song "Afternoon Delight," and we're playing it, and my teacher gets real. And she asks us all, so, what do you all think this means, afternoon delight? And I just remember saying, I don't know, maybe they're getting like ice cream and they're eating it before dinner and it's going to ruin their, I don't know. Isn't that what as far as I was concerned, afternoon delight was getting ice cream because I was 11. So, yeah.
Well, how about for me as a child, it was Puff the Magic Dragon, and then discovering what that was really about. Right?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Or actually, I was in Pilates and they were playing what is it? Just Pumped Up Kicks. And she was dancing to it, and I was like, you know what that song's about? And she's like, no, I just like this song. I was like, listen to the lyrics. Yeah. And then she's. Oh my gosh!
It's a good song, but
it's a great song. It's very catchy. Yeah. And then you stop to, oh man, I'm basically, yeah. So we've always been there. It's always been there. It always will be there. So.
Woo! Wow.
Oh my.
Deandre went to a liberal college, probably, or liberal high school.
High school, very liberal high school.
But yeah, I mean, Alex, Deborah, do you guys have any thoughts on this idea? Or,
when you're writing to your audience, you can select how you're going to do it. If you want it to be, like you're saying, if it's you're intentionally doing it to get banned, or the horror genre is going to stand out more than any other one, you can go full gore, you can go full violence, and not have to worry about it. But it's your choice. You're the one who's deciding how to do it, how to put it out there. As long as you're presenting it well, your readership likes it, then it shouldn't really be an issue. It's usually when, like you said, it's one panel that suddenly drew someone's attention, and all of a sudden it's banned. It shouldn't be banned. It should just be moved over to a different category if you want to, but not take it away. Because once you start hiding books and preventing people from reading things, you're either going to try to erase these things from their understanding and history, or like you said, you're suddenly gonna, wow, there's a big influx of purchases of this book all over the world now, because same thing with the Dr. Seuss books. They suddenly try to look those up online now. This little $2 book is now $2,000 if you want to buy it from someone who owns it. So you can go both ways.
True.
What I'm doing is actually offering more than one option. So I'm not taking away a book. It's not that they couldn't get the version that had the sex in it if they wanted it, because it's still out there. But I'm putting out a new edition for the large print hardcover that doesn't have it. So I'm actually offering more, not less, which is a big difference from book banning. I'd like to see more of that, actually,
Yeah, and that's the same thing I did with my book. Is like, you could get it in English in Germany if you wanted to, or you could get it in German, and it was translated the way that they wanted to translate it in German. So, and more times than not, I was finding the English version was selling anyway. So that's the kind of, it goes to show you, it's one of those things that you've been told as an author, you should translate it for the native audience that you're going for, but really, truly, honestly, If you put it out in English, I mean, how many of us have sales in, like,
Not me.
India and
No.
places
Yeah.
like that? That
I had a
you would
sale in
never
India.
thought.
God
Yeah.
reviewed it even, so
Yeah.
Well, Australians speak English.
Well, true. That's true. You're not wrong. Or like, yeah.
Oh yeah.
I think I had a sale or two in Japan too. So
Yeah. I mean, that happens, right? So, I mean, it's just one of those random things, and you never market to them, you never expect that, but for some reason, somebody there found you in some way, and you got it, and you were able to put it out there. So, I mean, I don't discourage anybody from doing the translation thing. I thought it was an interesting experience personally, but it's different. But ultimately, I think just putting it out in English was, fine. And if I had marketed it just on my own through Germany, which I kind of wish I had done, because I ended up making my money back. I spent a lot of money doing the translation too, which people don't realize is it's expensive. So doing that, it's if I just put it out myself and just marketed right to Germany, I would have done a lot better. But or maybe not, I don't know. But because I had an in, so that was pretty nice too. But I know I'm getting way off subject here, but I mean, the idea is ultimately, I mean, is this really is something that happens every once in a while. We get riled up about it because we should, because these books deserve to be seen. Deserve to be read. And whether you believe that or not, that's up to you. It's your discretion. That's the great thing about democracy that we've been talking about, is your discretion, whether you choose to take what is being said to you in the context you decide to take it in, or if you feel like you don't want to read it because it might offend you or have some kind of belief that you don't have. All of those things. I mean, there's people who don't read Harry Potter simply because of what J.K. Rowling believes as a person, and they don't separate the art from the artist, which is a debatable subject matter on its own merit. So those ideas, but the one thing that we should be doing, and I think that's what the whole intention was for me anyway here, was to make people aware that this is happening, and it can snowball and get worse. But if you're due diligent, if you have the approach that every person here has in the professional manner that they have it, what can you do? It is what it is, right? I mean, it's ultimately what it's about. And I think let's if you want to go ahead and ban all these books here of all these people, let's tell everybody where they can go and get it so they can ban it and make you more popular. How about that? All right.
Okay.
So let's start with you. We'll go backwards this time, and MADILYNN, start us off. Tell everybody where they can get that wonderfully bannable book.
It is very, very bannable. Definitely, it's a smutty book, guys, but it's got great adventure and magic and character growth in it. So I hope you'll check it out, as well as my other books. But you can find links to all of my books that are published widely on the website here. Also find me on all social media. This is a little insane. I'll use this arm to point to. It's on there too. So yeah.
Awesome. All right, Anita, tell everybody where they can ban your books, where they can get your books to ban.
Well, you can find everything at afstewart.ca, as on the screen there. And there's one that's very bannable. Lots of disturbing scenes, lots of dead people. And another one here, horror poetry. Yes, monsters, madness, all sorts of horrible things that you can ban. As the Killer and Demons books speak for themselves, pretty much. Yeah. So,
Nice.
and you can find everything on my website, on my social media, on my merch, everything else. And you can check me over on my Facebook group at AF Stewart's Minions and complain over there too. So
Awesome. All right, Alex, where can people find your books to ban?
My books are on Amazon. You can also go to my website, alexgzarate.com. Everything is listed. It's my fantasy book right here. I have a photography book I've also put out there. It's out there. It's been pretty good. It's been going over pretty well. Yeah, just Alex G. ZARATE, social media, everywhere. Look it up. I pop up in every genre you can find, every platform.
It's gorgeous. I actually bought it last night when I was doing the links, so I'm real excited to dive into it. It looks fantastic, man. Congratulations.
Wonderful. Thanks.
All right, Nikki, tell everybody where they can ban your books, where
You
they can find
can
the ban.
ban my books on Amazon, Barnes and Noble. They're there too. You can go to my website down there. You can ban this book. It's really nasty and got a terribly deformed fetus on the front of it. Or you can ban these books that are set in the 1930s with pulp noir, and we've got like fish monsters, we've got golems, we've got zombie chickens, we've got all this, and sex. Well, kind of sex. There is some sex, and someone's heart gets ripped out. It's terribly violent and will definitely scar children in the womb. So ban these books. All this stuff and other things that I've written are all on my website or on Amazon. I'm everywhere.
Awesome. And this is going to now. Congratulations, you found us. If you have, instead of banning us, how about you hit the like button? Smash that like button. That's important. So do that. Do that. That's your way of banning us, by hitting it, smashing that like button, and then comment and subscribe to those also can ban us. So do that. And it's kind of funny that somebody mentioned earlier moral majority in the comments, because my book, We the Moral Majority, is out there. I don't say it enough. I should be probably pimping it more often, I guess. But my book, We the Moral Majority, is out there, and it is definitely bannable. So go get it and ban it, and let everybody know you banned it too. So let everybody know you banned all these books. And while we are banning, it's time to welcome. And that being said, it's time to welcome the final 5 minutes. And today's it belongs to Miss Deborah Parmly. Deborah, it's all yours.
Thank you. So you can find my books at debraparmly.com and also on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kobo, all over the place. Just do a search and you'll find me out there. So I was talking earlier about the hardcover edition, which I have right here. It's a proof copy. That's why this is across the front. And you'll find these. I've got the large print edition up here in the corner. So this particular book is book 17 in a 50-book set of American Brides, one for each state in the U.S. And I was invited to write in this, and I do the Ohio book, which is where I'm from. It's Isabella, Bride of Ohio, and it's based a little bit on my grandmother, Isabella, who was from Sweden. So I was able to put some Swedish things in there, which was kind of fun. And I set it in a town that's 15 minutes from my parents' house, Yellow Springs, Ohio. So I actually have personal connection to this book, which is why I chose it as the first one to put in large print hardcover. So as I mentioned before, this book is a sweeter version, and it has the same excitement in it as before, just closed door scenes for the rest. So one of the things about my books is that there's usually danger for the heroine. And a mail order bride is not necessarily a safe thing to be, which I'm going to read a section out. The section I'm going to read is from her trip on the train out to meet her future husband. Smiling as she walked, passengers, some noting her good mood, smiled and nodded in return, and she felt all was right with the world. Passengers hurried past her, but she, enjoying each moment, simply breathed in the air and enjoyed her walk. Then Isabella was jostled, and her father's Bible knocked from her hand. Oh, father's Bible. Everything happened so fast. She bent to pick it up. A white piece of paper had escaped and was blowing away. Oh no, father's letter, the one he'd written to her from him and mother before they passed. Separated from her parents because of the quarantine, these were the last words from her parents. She'd bookmarked a passage in Psalms with it. She couldn't lose that letter. The white paper went tumbling and then lifted and tumbled away from her. She lifted her skirts and gave chase to it, down around the corner. Dark clouds overhead blocked the sun, and the first raindrops began to fall. The letter, she almost had it. She bent to reach for it, and 2 men grabbed her. That's the end of chapter 3. Chapter 4. One man pulled Isabella up and back, a hand over her shoulders and another over her mouth. The other man raced around in front of her, pulling her hands together with one big hand, while his other hand pulled out a length of rope. They were pulling her toward an open door in the side of the building. Isabella gave a muffled scream, but the hand on her mouth was tight. Her eyes, wide and terrified, fixed on the man in front of her, who was wrapping her wrists with rope as they dragged her closer to the dark room. He was grinning at her, and her mind strangely fixated on how unkempt he was. His teeth were yellowed, his nose bent out of place. Long hair fell into his face, shaggy and dirty. He looked up at her and leered, grinning. They were almost there now. Isabella gave one last terrific heave, but the man behind her was so strong, and the other man laughed, about to tighten a knot. Then Isabella heard a thud, and suddenly the man behind her released her and fell. Isabella fell to one side, but turned, landing on her shoulder with a painful thud. She saw another man fighting the dirty one who'd tied her wrists. The new man was much cleaner than the first. He was much faster, too, throwing punches like lightning that landed on the dirty man's face and body. Finally, the new man knocked the other man down, who scrambled backwards as the new man drew a pistol from under his coat and pointed it at him. Without a word, the dirty man got up and ran away. For a moment, the clean man looked around, and Isabella was able to study him. It was only then she realized her rescuer was Tom from the dining car. So that is in chapter 4. She hasn't even made it out to the town where she will meet her husband-to-be yet. And it's not the only danger before her happy ever after. So I like action and adventure in my scenes. Typically, this one I don't have her learn to shoot, but typically I have the heroines learn how to shoot or protect themselves in some way. And so I hope you enjoyed this little section of Isabella, and check out all my other books. And remember that it's always a good time to go indie now.